Welcome back to Consent Conversations.
Consensual conversations. Yeah, because it's not just consent conversations. They're sensual conversations about and consent. And they're not consensual conversations.
And I am consenting. I think we're both consenting to have these conversations.
We sure
are. These
are
actually consensual conversations.
We super dive into it. So listen up, gang. One thing that I think has been very cool about the passage of time and the progression of human beings is that we have started talking more about mental health. There's a lot of things that are still wrong with the world, but one thing that's been pretty great is we're starting to create more space for people that function differently, for also understanding that there's balance in life, a work-life balance.
And offering different categories instead of just saying, that's crazy Mark.
Yeah, that's crazy Mark. Or, hey, repress your feelings.
Yeah.
Toughen up, man up, those things.
This woman has no rights and she's had 6 children in 7 years and she's unhappy. So she's clearly insane.
Yeah. Give her a vibrator to help with her hysteria.
Genuinely, though.
That's exactly what happened. Lord Servo, thank you for that sub. Super appreciate it. Also, thank you for all your help with the puppet. Well, I'm glad you're all here. We're going to talk about, Rachel, like, what is mental health? What is mental health?
What is mental health?
Yeah. How do you know if you're mentally healthy?
I think, do you feel neutral to good when you wake up in the morning? I think after something bad happens, do you feel like you have resilience where you can experience the bad thing, feel all those feelings, and then move on? Do people enjoy interacting with you, and do you enjoy interacting with others? Not all others. Not all others.
Okay.
But do you have some fulfilling relationships in your life that you've been able to maintain?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you feel supported by your own choices and by your family?
Okay. Do you feel feelings?
Do you feel feelings at all?
That's a big one.
Can you identify feelings when you feel them?
That's a tough one.
There's so much that goes into mental health, and it's not just I feel kind of crappy today. It can go specifically into all kinds of areas of, there's bad mental health with people who are neurotypical, and there's bad mental health with people who are neurodiverse. Yeah. And there's just a very wide range.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I look at with mental health, especially when people were in a moment that they're struggling, is it's all about balance. It's all about, for one thing, and this is maybe not the most mentally healthy thing to say, but it is real. In our regular lives, we're playing a losing game, which is there are 5 aspects of our life that make up our experience, big wedges of our pie. Our relationship with ourselves, family,
yes,
our community, our health, our financial health.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm labeling the exact 5 because there are 5. But anyway, the bigger thing is when you're building out your life, you can't ever perfectly do all of them at the same time.
Yeah, while we are striving for balance, absolute perfect balance across all the areas of our life that need attention is a pretty unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, and the balance is also not like a seesaw where each one of them is getting 20%.
No.
Not what happens. The way that it really works out is one of them's getting 80%, and then you've got 20% divided amongst the other 4 for a period of time, and then that one might come down to 60,
it out again,
and then 30, and then
something will happen, and something needs another 80% of your attention because that's how life is.
There's only so much enough time in the day that is the one thing we're always working against. It's I would love to be healthy, and I would love to see my community. It's okay, well, I get up at 4:30 in the morning so I can go work out. And then I have to have my individual career time. And then there's my community time. And then there's my work time. And then there's my time with my wife. And then
there's your you time.
And then there's my you time. You know, and you get up and you're starting to do that. And at the top of the day, you're already like, I'm running out of time. I don't have enough time to fit all the things.
And I am tired.
And I'm tired. I'm tired. So when our life is out of balance for an extended period of time, that starts to weigh on our mental health.
Absolutely.
That is the space where stress comes from, where you feel disconnected from a certain aspect of your life. So like maybe you're doing really well in your career and your time with your partner feels sort of like roommatey, or you know, the way that we create balance is by automating other things
as much as possible. So we free up our time.
Right. Even sort of things like taking care of your body. If you're like, oh, I always work out or I always do a certain thing, eventually you get to a point that you're automating that thing. I always get up at this time and do these workouts and don't even think about it.
Oh, yes. My dad is a huge fitness enthusiast and has been for his entire life. But when you start training he's done several Ironman triathlons, and the pure amount of hours it takes to dedicate to that kind of training, it's incredible and very impressive, but there's also no way to actually keep in balance with some other things in your life. And while I'm proud of my dad's accomplishments, there's part of me that's like, what are we running from?
Oh, I mean, yeah. Sometimes we give more to one side of our life because that's the side of our life where we feel like we have control.
Or that's the side of our life where we feel is the most depleted and we're feeling like shit. And we go, you know what? Clearly I have to change something. And so all the energy is redirected. And then you look up and you're like, oh shit, I forgot about the other things.
Okay, so having balance in your life is not easy. Just like all the things that we've talked about on this show.
None of this is easy.
Is easy. God damn it. So a lot of people that don't spend a lot of time like Rachel and I do self-analyzing everything in every single moment all the time, you may not be able to figure out, you might just feel bad or feel tired or feel stressed and not really know why.
Or just feel like you don't really like yourself.
Yeah. Man, relationship with yourself is like, we should do a whole, how do you have consent with yourself? We'll get into that. One of the ways that I think is the easiest way for people to figure that out is to first, we gotta identify what's out of balance in your life, and the way that you can do that is just one, go with your instincts. You usually know, but the second thing is tracking your time. Yeah. How much actual time are you spending doing XYZ category?
And as long as you're tracking your time, if you're somebody that has maybe some trouble identifying your emotions around things, you know, those little handouts at the doctor's office where they're like, how many times in the last week have you felt hopeless? How many times in the last couple weeks have you felt like you're a bad person or there's no point? Like you can also ask yourself questions of like, in this area of my life, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I feel awful about it and 10 being I feel amazing, what's the number?
Yeah.
And you can literally just look at the numbers, look at the amount of time you're spending, and then try to say, okay, where can I reallocate?
Yeah. Right? Tracking is a big thing. I got an Apple Watch, and part of the thing that I think is important about tracking stuff, and one, I'm an ADHD person. I'm all over the place. That has caused me to be very organized, but there is also a really big difference between how I feel about stuff versus what is actually happening. So the tracking on my watch, now I can go, oh my God, like, yeah, I'm actually not walking very much. And that's something I really enjoy and I'm behind on. Like, I have all of the stats in my space that let me know. It's like, Peter, you didn't get out of bed today. And we know this because it's like
Just-
it's like 6 o'clock in the afternoon and your body has only burned like 300 calories at rest, and it's like, okay, that's not typical for my like regular happy active day.
See, what's so funny is that is a positive thing to you. I would never get a tracker like that, because to me, if I have not moved out of bed by 3 p.m.,
You don't want a reminder?
I know it. And I'm already yelling at myself in my brain. And so all the tracker does is it might as well just say, hey, piece of shit, why don't you fucking get up and do something, you garbage raccoon person. And but that's just because that's the default of how I talk to myself in my brain, and I have to be very conscious to speak to myself differently. So for me, a reminder like that would be detrimental. But reminders like, oh God, like I'm looking for a reason to get out of bed. I don't know if any of you have this, but sometimes when I'm going to bed, I'm thinking about all the things I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be the most amazing version of myself tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and I'm like, I've looked at Reddit for an hour and I forgot everything about how to be a person. So something I actually do is I will write down the things, and then I just have a little list. And I go, oh, right, this is what I wanted to do today. And just that level of tracking can help me get out of bed and get moving, rather than a little reminder that's like, hey, move your body, fat ass.
Okay. That's great. and the
People's brains process things differently.
The important thing that Rachel demonstrated is like she knows herself. She knows the things that work. You know, I think that there is a lot. I mean, we can talk forever about this. Is my biggest shortcoming is having to battle with potential Peter.
Oh,
Potential
Dream Peter?
Potential Peter is always proactive. He is never tired. He is always hyper focused. And if I was like, okay, if I was living an optimal Peter from the moment I woke up into the moment I went to bed, I will get X number of things done. And therefore, I make my to-do list the next day is potential Peter's to-do list. It is not realistic Peter's to-do list. And therefore, realistic Peter fails every day.
Can I tell you?
Because he's a person.
I have hated the word potential for so many years.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you had this as a child, but I think perhaps a lot of us that were labeled gifted kids in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And all the adults would talk about is how much potential we have. And if you fall anything short of all that potential that your parents and teachers and whomever talked about, that can be a bit of a cacophony of self-blame and self-loathing and self-hate. Because look at everything you could have been and done, and you didn't.
That kills
and
me
it
every
must
day.
be because something's wrong with you.
Not
because you're just a human.
in when I was in school, I purposely went against what my potential was.
Really?
And my expectations of my teachers. Because I was like,
what
rebel
was the
without a cause.
expectation?
I had all my teachers that were like, Peter doesn't study. He purposely denies doing homework, and yet he's really smart and picks up on these things quickly. He could be doing better, I guess. And my response was like, what's the point? I'm passing your stupid tests with 5% of my energy. I've got other shit to do. And they didn't.
Clearly, I don't need you.
Well, I was like we didn't like that answer, and I was like, well, listen, I mean, I don't understand what you're doing here either. I don't know why we're doing any of this. That was high school Peter, but Peter, who graduated, stepped into a space of like, I had done so well because I was in all these different smaller ponds. I excelled. Whenever I'm in a pond in a place, I do great. That's different than being in the open ocean of the space. Yeah. And I quickly fell into the trap of like, oh, when people work hard and do, and are disciplined and do all these things, they do well in the world. And that's actually not the truth.
Yeah,
you can do well in the world.
That's not always the truth.
No, it's actually about 50% the truth.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people that don't work very hard that do very well. There's also people that work very hard and do very well. And
there's people that work really hard and don't do very well.
And it's a wide mix of all of those things. So like, man, the potential space and letting go of potential in your day is a huge part of having mental health, because there was this experiment that was done with monkeys that like demonstrated how people function in our relationship with reality. Bunch of monkeys. They wanted to teach them how to use money. Okay. So
I think I know where this is going, but
so
please continue.
so they gave them washers to spend, and when they gave the zookeeper a washer, they would give him a grape. All right?
Yes.
That's it. They're like, exchange of currency, I give you food.
Great.
So the first test that was done, zookeeper A walked around, gave him a grape. Zookeeper B walked him around, gave them 2 grapes for one of the washers. And they're like, fuck zookeeper A, we're going to B. They already learned. I want the biggest bang for my buck.
Capitalism.
Yeah. Monkeys do it too. We all do it, which is we want the most amount of reward for the least amount of energy.
Always.
Okay. Experiment number 2. Zookeeper A comes in, gives them 1 grape for their coin. Zookeeper B sometimes gives them 3, sometimes gives them 0, sometimes gives them 1. He is now inconsistent. They start going to A because they're like, well, at least I know I'm going to get 1 grape.
Yeah, predictability is high value.
Predictability is high value. The final one, which is what we're really talking about. Zookeeper A came in, had 2 grapes in their hand, and then when they gave him a coin, or had 3 grapes in their hand. When he gave him a coin, gave them 2 grapes. And those monkeys, because they saw the 3 grapes, when they only got 2 grapes, lost their fucking minds. They were like, this is bullshit.
How dare you?
I'm being scammed. How dare you? Zookeeper B comes in, only has 1 grape in his hand. And when they gave them the washer, gave them 2 grapes. And they were like, this is the best fucking day of my whole life. I didn't expect it. Now, what has happened in this story is both monkeys got
the same
2
amount of
grapes, and their emotional relationship to it was on the opposite ends.
Can I tell you that I honestly think under-promising and over-delivering is like one of the secrets to life?
Yeah.
100%. I thought you were going in a different direction because I heard about a study where monkeys were introduced to the concept of money, and several female monkeys began trading sexual favors for money.
Yes, because it's a resource that you have. That's smart. You earn grapes or washers or whatever your currency is. Yeah.
I was like, okay, this makes sense.
But the bigger thing is, how you set up your next day and what you are comparing your life to is setting up how you're measuring everything.
The difference between comparing your life to your life in the past versus your life in the present, measuring your own progress versus measuring your life to somebody else's life who is in a different body with a different brain, different background, and
they're
different
lying on Instagram about it.
And lying about it, absolutely lying about it. That's such a path to self-loathing and disappointment. We talk all the time on this show about managing expectations.
Yeah.
And getting to know yourself is part of managing expectations for yourself as well.
Well, I have another interesting yet possibly sad truth for everybody. This has been studied a ton, and this is relating to exactly what we're talking about. Your life is made up mostly by the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And I mean, like, they've studied this in all kinds of different ways. Your wealth is related to the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Your happiness, like your mental health. We pick our tribes, and this may be like family oriented.
Or work oriented.
But I will tell you all, do this at varying points in your life. Make a list of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, and you will see that your life in that current state is a weird average of all of those different experiences.
Now I'm afraid to do this.
But that's also part of the thing of okay, so what you're saying is if I want to move forward and have a better life, I need different friends or family, or I need to like, and it's like, well, maybe but maybe you spend more time with
it's not the
this
only
person.
answer.
It's not the only answer.
But it can be part of the answer.
Yeah.
Nothing we say here is going to be the one and only
No.
answer to feeling great about yourself all the time, which is also an unrealistic expectation.
Super unrealistic.
These are just pieces of the puzzle that you can put together if you're in a place of, I don't feel good when I look in the mirror and when I'm alone with my thoughts.
Yeah.
What the fuck do I do?
But it's worth doing the self-analysis, because you might go, man, I'm surrounded by a bunch of negative assholes right now in my life, or like I'm surrounded by a lot of people that are always going out and drinking, or I'm surrounded by a lot of people that are very money oriented and they're making a lot of money right now, and who you spend your time with really dictates so much about your own experience of the world, of yourself. How does that make you feel now?
I mean, kind of the same thing as a lot of the things we're going to be talking about, which is scary because the prospect of changing that means that there are going to be some really difficult conversations and some really difficult self-realizations, but also exciting because that is absolutely something that is changeable.
For sure. Yeah. This has been something, I actually listened to 2 different podcasts about it recently, about the real method of improving wealth, if you want to be financially better off, is to have more rich friends.
Where do you meet these rich friends?
But what I'm getting at is, like, people talk about, oh, it's about getting really disciplined and focusing on this and taking these courses on money mindset stuff. It's like, no, actually, it's about surrounding yourself with other rich people, because it's like, basically, if you wanted to learn French really quickly, you'd go live in France.
Absolutely.
You would have the immersive experience. Well, if you want to learn how to get wealthy really quickly, surround yourself with wealthy people, because it's not just that you are building the bonds in a relationship with them. You are also subconsciously picking up all of the different behaviors that they are doing that lead towards their own wealth generation. And money also just makes money too, which isn't a whole other thing. But
money makes money, and also connections very much make money. And if you are surrounded with people that have money, even if they don't want to invest or whatever, like, rich people know other rich people with money.
That's how it works. Yeah.
And so much of our modern economy and work life is based on connections.
It's all connections. It's all connections. Hollywood, the whole Nepo baby movement that's happening right now, it's a big thing, because they're like, oh yeah, this is how all things work.
I don't know why anyone was surprised about that.
No.
That's the way it's been literally forever. But that's the way it is in every single industry.
Right. So all of you out there that are parents, do not worry about educating your kids. Listen.
Worry about your kids making friends with kids of rich parents.
Yeah. We talked about this on the podcast before when Milo was on, but if you want to do really well, go to a school that a lot of rich kids go to. Build those relationships. How you do in the classes, nobody gives a shit. Because you'll have a person.
But what friend did you make in 3rd grade?
Right. But what friend you get? So, anyway.
God, we're fucked. We are so fucked.
But the thing is, though, you and I have a community of people that are like very mindful, empathetic, educated, artistic, creative, open, charismatic, funny.
And honestly, those things for me take priority over having rich friends.
For sure.
Because those are the things I prioritize in my life. So it makes sense that I spend a lot of time with people that are very communicative and emotionally intelligent and caring and entertaining and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. So everybody out there, It's going to feel weird. I had to do it for a class once, and it really made me think about, especially because I was feeling stuck at the time. I wanted to like level up my career in the space that I was at. And I was like, oh man, these are my friends I spend time with. These are my friends who are also in the same plane of success as I am. How do we break out of this mold? And the answer is like, we have to fold in some folks who are at another tier that we want to be at. So make a list of your friends. That's
And I wish I could recommend ways to do that, but that's not what today's show is about. And I don't even have any advice for meeting more rich people. I don't.
No, but it's not even, but like but this goes across the board. If you are finding that like you're in a community that is really lacking in empathy, spend more time with your friends that you get those things from.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all have more than 5 friends. I know all of it. There's more than 5 people here, so you automatically all have more than 5 friends. So once you've done all this, you've taken.
Not everybody has more than 5 friends.
I know, not everybody, but we hope that everyone does. Anyway, once you've sort of like checked where you're spending your time, do a little how are you feeling about you versus potential you? Looking at your list of friends, what's out of balance? And we want to talk about, this is like the hardest thing where like mental health stuff comes into play. There are things that are recharging for you, relaxing, and
numbing. And those are 3 very different things.
Yeah. So when we feel something's out of balance, you know, we'll tend to get stuck in the cycle of either relaxing or numbing. And then you go, God, like for example, I know a lot of people that are in the 9-to-5 game, that are getting up really early. They're feeling really tired, and their weekends are spent recovering from their week, which is a hard grind, to live in. Your weekends then end up being a lot of TV time, a lot of like sleeping because you feel like you need sleep,
or drinking, or overindulging in eating, things like that. Things that sort of help you release the tension.
But what is missing, and it's missing because it's not as easy to get, are things that are recharging.
That are going to give you more energy for the week ahead.
Fill the bucket. Rather
than just keeping the bucket at a base level of base function.
Yeah.
And the vicious circle about mental health is poor mental health makes it 1,000 times harder to do the things that would improve your mental health.
Yeah, that's the cycle that we're all currently in. We're all in this like crazy rat race right now, all the time, especially in the US. In the US, the standard is nothing you ever do is good enough.
No.
There's always someone out there better.
It's based on growth forever.
Growth forever.
Which is unsustainable.
Growth forever.
Growth forever.
I like that. I want that as a t-shirt.
Growth forever.
Growth forever.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. And thank you for the sub, Battle Chaos. I want to say I appreciate you. Growth forever. Here's another thing that I know is true about people. Most people don't even know what's recharging for them.
That's true. And a lot of people don't know the difference between relaxing and numbing.
Yeah.
And to those people, I have also had trouble differentiating between relaxing and numbing. And what I would say is, what is the feeling in your body while you're doing the activity? Sometimes, like one of my numbing coping mechanisms is just like the scrolling on the phone, right? That endless, like there's always something new on Reddit. There's always something new on Instagram. There's always something new on TikTok. Like it's just the constant scrolling where unless you're looking for something specific or you're checking in with a couple people you know, it very quickly reverts to just this kind of endless stream of new stimuli for your brain. And I have found that if I can stop and check in with my body, very often like my shoulders are hunched up, My jaw is clenched.
Ooh.
I've been sitting in an uncomfortable position for a long time, and I just didn't notice because my brain is just not connected with my body at all.
Yeah.
Relaxing, you should feel your shoulders moving away from your ears. Your breathing should be easy and slow and even. Like you shouldn't try to move and feel like you are releasing tension from like a knot in your stomach or pain in your lower back. Like relaxing should translate to your body, because very often mental health and physical health are very much
Oh my God.
very
yes.
much linked. So for me, like, the relaxation means that my brain is still thinking. And the numbing means that my brain has just shut down.
Yeah. You've gone into like food drip mode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
One thing I want to point out, because there's been such great conversations around mental health, a lot of people have a lot of mental health advice. And the thing that bothers me most about the mental health advice is they treat everybody like they're the same kind of person. So it's like, if you really want to feel better, meditate, do some yoga, exercise,
Take a bubble bath.
take a bubble bath.
Cook something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Like,
Those are all fine.
absolutely.
And there's a lot of data that supports those things. But for me, what's missing in those tend to be in the sort of like relaxing space. And if it's something that's recharging for you, doing yoga is recharging for you, and you get a fucking huge high after you've done a great yoga session,
Great.
fucking great. Then you
Awesome.
know your thing. But if you do yoga and afterwards you're like, I mean, I feel good, but I'm kind of tired. It was nice to have things be quiet, but like,
I had to figure that out when it came to what workouts worked for me,
oh, for sure.
because I have this thing in my brain, which I'm not going to go into why it's there, but if my cardio gets into like the orange and red zone, I will start crying.
Okay.
It doesn't feel good. And it will trigger this like, I'm not feeling strong and getting better. It will trigger this like, oh, you're working so hard because you're weak. I know. I need to work on it.
You don't like getting data about yourself.
I don't like it at all. I don't care for it. So I have figured out that would like running and spinning and high intensity interval training, would those things be good for my body? Probably, but
Sure.
it is garbage for my mental health because
Yeah.
it makes me feel like shit. Things like dancing, weightlifting, yoga, things where I can like take it slow, keep my heart rate at a manageable pace. I actually do feel energized and I feel better. So, the answer is not always just, oh yeah, whatever this Instagram guru is telling you to do. It does take experimentation.
Yeah, I mean, there's also another side that I'm going to get into after this, which is like your recharging thing may not always be available.
Oh yeah.
Which is a mind fuck in life. But, I started getting into hiking about a decade ago, and I found for me that becomes a recharging space of just like being in nature, moderate exercise. Sometimes I do extreme hiking and climb cliffs that I really shouldn't be doing. That's also very exciting for me, and I got to stop doing that at some point.
Hey, adrenaline feels good.
Adrenaline feels great. So that's one thing I know. But also, I get really recharged by challenging conversations, which is why I started a channel, which I can do it weekly. And I'll tell you, I feel a million times better than I was a few months ago because I've gotten to see you every week and I've gotten to talk with other people. This becomes my home base and I feel great.
Stimulating those parts of your brain.
Yes, stimulating those parts of your brain. And then the other side of things is doing theater and performing. And unfortunately, I can't just go do it.
No.
I'm not fueled by doing TikTok or by
No.
things in the digital space. I need an audience there. I need to riff with them. I can't just have an audience at my fucking house whenever I'm feeling depressed.
See, I can play YouTube karaoke tracks.
Great.
And sing along to no one. That does help me. But we have different brains.
Right. And it's also hard. My wife is definitely in need of recharging. She's kind of on a cycle of relaxing and numbing on the weekends and isn't getting to do the recharging thing because a big recharging thing for her outside of baking, which she does a lot, is theater. And she just doesn't have the time for it. And she knows in her head, I know exactly how to make myself feel better. It is over there and not in my reach.
It's inaccessible.
It's inaccessible. And I just like kind of have to wait or stomp down everything and wedge it in.
And that comes up a lot with, especially in America, with the American healthcare system, and what is going to be most people's first recommendation if your mental health isn't great. Have you spoken to a therapist? Have you spoken to a counselor? Have you seen a psychiatrist? Any of those things.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, finding one of those support people can be pretty fucking inaccessible.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's not like I can just show up to go see a therapist tomorrow.
Right.
You have to go through insurance. You have to get approval. You have to get a referral if you have insurance, which if you don't, very often it is not financially feasible for a lot of people.
Yeah.
There can often be a lot of hurdles towards the thing that will recharge you.
Yeah. I think everyone, and this, what's funny is the way that we live our lives don't make any sense based off of what is good for us. Like what I was just going to say is, hey, right now, make it a priority for yourself tonight to write down what is recharging for you. Or so just like spend 10 minutes to figure that out. And you know what? Even my own brain, and I'm sure a bunch of other people were just like, I don't have the fucking time for that.
Ew.
Are you kidding me, Peter? Fucking homework to figure out what's good in my life and brings me joy? Are you fucking nuts?
I feel so much better after I journal, and convincing myself to sit down for 20 minutes and journal is so much more difficult than it fucking should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I know I'll feel good. I know it's an easy thing to do. It's super accessible. And sometimes I still can't make myself just sit down for 20 minutes and do it.
There are so many times that we will put off things that are good for us and will make us feel good. And this is part of what we talked about, the difference between recharging and relaxing. Recharging requires a little bit of energy input.
It does.
And that may feel like too much when you're already tired. So like, let's say you really love going dancing. Well, guess what? That might mean putting something on.
You got to take a
in your
shower.
car.
You got to do the makeup. You got to arrange a meeting place with people to go dancing.
It's exhausting.
It is.
Having a good time is a lot of fucking work.
I'm now getting to the point where almost every time there's a social interaction, even if I know I'm going to enjoy it, there's a part of me that's like, oh, fuck, I got to put all that shit on again. Like, this is now an obligation rather than like a source of joy and excitement. It doesn't change the fact that I enjoy myself immensely when I'm there. And when I leave, I'm glad I did it. But it's kind of like the forcing yourself to step into the gym, forcing yourself to sit down and journal. That takes energy.
Listen, gang, this is a very big truth about the modern age. How many of us are more thrilled out of our fucking minds when somebody cancels plans?
Oh, it feels so good.
I love it. I love having
good.
something in my... We talked about this before about like the potential of things. You know, I love having something in my calendar. Oh my God. We're going to go swing dancing next weekend with these people. It's going to be amazing. And then as it gets closer, I'm like, I don't fucking want to go swing dancing. And then somebody cancels and I go, yeah, I got my night back to do nothing.
Nothing at all. Nothing recharging. Nothing good for me.
Oh, God.
And the thing is, when you're a kid, your parents kind of shuttle you around to all of those different enrichment, recharging activities. You don't really have much of a choice. And when you're an adult, you have to parent yourself when you're a grown up.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to reparent yourself because your parents did a shitty job. So sometimes you have to take yourself to the activity that makes you feel good and then tell yourself that you did a good job.
Man. And we had Love the Height put in here, and this is a good point. He says, it sucks when they do it at the last minute when I'm already on the way. And the
Yes.
reason why it sucks is because you've already started paying for it.
Right. The energy has already been expended and it's inconsiderate.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the other thing. It's always worth it. So folks, we do need to incorporate recharging things. We are going to mentally resist them at first because we are tired and they take some investment. However, even knowing this is not going to help. You're never going to get out of the cycle until you invest. And part of the thing that we've talked about a lot on the show, which is like moderation, is like, okay, don't try to fix your whole goddamn life all at the same time.
Oh, God. I've done that so many times and it never works.
So many times.
It never, ever works. Progress and change literally has to be at a certain pace that your brain can adjust.
Yeah.
So when we talk about like, okay, I need some kind of enrichment activity, I need to get out of my enclosure, I need something that is actually recharging. One of the easiest ways to do that is by scheduling one thing that is regularly occurring. So your brain starts to understand this expectation of like, hey, on Wednesdays, we get up and we go swing dancing.
It starts to automate.
It starts to automate. And what you start to do is your brain has all of these different neurons and places that it connects. And in order to get from one place to another, it has to make a path. And when you start putting a new habit, a new regular activity in place, you start forming new neural pathways. You start like making your own trail in there. And the more you walk on that trail, the easier it is, right? If you're hacking your way through jungle and you've never been there before, it's going to be arduous and it's going to take a lot of energy versus a well-formed and well-beaten path that you can just skip down.
Yeah. This is the same thing, which is true in physics. It takes more energy to get a car up to 90 miles an hour than it is to just keep it at 90 miles an hour.
Absolutely.
And that is also true when we start to plateau, meaning like, let's say you make the commitment to like have workout more often. Great. Start off with a small workout, make the commitment to only do 20 minutes. Great. You eventually build that up. You're in 20 minutes every day a week. Super cool. And then you reach a point where you're like, man, I'm not making any progress. I'm just spending a lot of time working out and I don't feel any better. I feel kind of the same. And the real reason why is like, well, now you need to add a little bit more. If you're not putting in that extra bit of energy, you're not getting anything out. You've tapped that well.
Which in that sense, it does make sense how our entire society is based because our brains and our bodies are kind of based the same way.
Growth forever.
Growth forever.
Yeah.
That if you want your brain or your body or your spirit, whatever you want to call it, if you want it to change and improve, you have to change something.
Yeah.
Which means you have to be constantly changing things.
And the way that you really are doing it in the practical sense is that you are taking some energy from other parts of your life and reinvesting in this.
And some people naturally have more energy than others. I don't know if you've heard of the spoon concept.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's this concept that was originated by a person that was suffering from lupus. And the way that she tried to describe to her friend how she managed her day is, you know what? I have a handful of spoons at the beginning of my day. And every activity I do requires a certain amount of spoons. And when I'm out of spoons, I am out. So, because I have an autoimmune disease, I need to use 2 spoons for getting dressed. And then I go, okay, I have 8 spoons left and I need to feed myself and I need to get to work. How many spoons is that going to use today? And then by the time she's done, she has 3 spoons. So is she going to work out? Is she going to call a friend? Is she going to take care of her pet?
Yeah.
There's all these things, and there's only so many spoons that she can allocate towards each activity. And it's kind of just one of the unfair things in life that some people have more energy than others. And there are a lot of diagnosable mental illnesses that severely limit your energy and capacity. That's why comparing yourself to other people is just a never-ending path to misery. And the only person to compare yourself to is the you of yesterday, or a week ago, or a year ago. Because I have a different level of energy than some of the people in my life.
Yeah.
And I see all the things they're doing, and I'm literally just like, how the fuck do you have enough brain chemicals to do all the things you're doing? And it amazes me. And I really, in those moments, have to be gentle with myself and not shit on myself for not having that same amount of energy, but saying, I'm doing what I can with what I have.
Yeah. Oh, humaning is hard.
It's so hard.
So everybody, be gentle with yourself when you can. No one's going to be perfect about it.
Yeah. And you know what? It's easier to make changes when you're not screaming at yourself how much of a piece of shit you are.
Yes. Yes.
I think it's a little easier to make changes if it comes from a place of, you know what? I'm going to do this because I deserve it.
Yeah. Which is sometimes even that is hard to say.
That is really hard to say.
You know, there are times like, and this is something we all do, where we build things up. So like I have my to-do list as I kind of check things off throughout my week. Sometimes on that to-do list will be like, text this person or reply to that email. That thing will get kicked days. The task is not hard.
No, it would take 10 seconds.
It would take 10 seconds. It would type a word. And when I actually end up doing it, it's always like, oh, here's the thing. I do it. I sort of like, I make myself come up to the cliff and I just jump and don't think about it. And that's the way I kind of move through each of these things.
Trick yourself into doing it.
You trick yourself into doing it. But the reason why we're doing that in whatever state you're in, and I could speak only from my experience, and like a lot of it comes from my experience of my ADHD, which is changing gears is a tough thing. I'm either focused on fucking everything, focused on one thing, but if you're like, okay, Peter, just go from this thing to this thing, I'm like, oh wait, whoa, calm yourself. And so I feel vulnerable when I'm switching gears.
Ooh.
And the only thing that has happened is that I'm going from writing this email to this person to sending a new text about a different aspect of my life to another person. And that leap feels so big only because I'm like, ooh, I'm exposed.
You make a really good point that a lot of these analyzing your time, analyzing your own mental health, analyzing the things that recharge you, and then doing them requires an incredible amount of vulnerability and not feeling safe. Because there is so much safety in all the things we are used to doing. There is safety in numbing yourself out so you can't feel or think the bad thoughts and the bad feelings about yourself and your life.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a happy place to be in, but it is a comfortable and safe place to be in.
Yeah, which is why we get stuck in patterns.
Absolutely.
We do the things that we have already, and like your pattern might be something very complex and insane to somebody else, but it's something you do on such a regular basis that it's everyday automated to you,
Right.
and so it
But
doesn't
for
cost
you,
anything.
it's easy.
Yeah. So going back to what I was talking about before about your friend group thing, if there's a thing that you want to change in your life, surround yourself with people that are excelling at the thing that you want to change. So like, let's say you have a really hard time approaching people and asking people out or talking to strangers in public. If you go out with someone that loves talking to strangers, you're going to be roped into all of these conversations.
You're going to be sucked into it no matter what.
Yeah, you're going to be sucked into it. And then you're just doing it. Now, you didn't do the initial hit, but you did the step where the initial hit happened. You didn't freak out. You're just in that space. You're feeling good still.
And you're picking up the conversation and running with it.
Yeah.
But also seeing somebody break the ice and initiate that conversation so many times, there's going to be something that sinks in.
Right.
Always.
Right. So go back. Homework for today. Write down your 5 friends and criticize every aspect of who they are, and then blame them
in your own head.
In your own head. Yeah.
They don't need to hear about the things you're thinking.
And then you say, I'm the way I am because of you 5.
And that's it. No other reason at all.
What are you guys doing? Make more money. Be cooler and friendlier with other people. Whatever.
Everything we're talking about is a piece of the puzzle.
It's
just a piece.
It's all a piece of the puzzle. Rounding out into our next section, this is something tough because we're talking about consent and we talk a lot about relationship advice and our relationship with other people. After you've done this check, some people are not in a space where they are able to be vulnerable enough to enter into a relationship.
Yeah, I know we've mentioned before, like you don't need to have a perfect relationship with yourself in order to be in a relationship with another person. But in order to have a healthy and positive relationship, there are some skills that you should have.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Your engine should be working. Your car doesn't have to be new.
Level.
Yeah.
No.
But like it should move.
But it does have to run.
Yeah, it does have to run because part of the exchange of us interacting in our community is that like you can't show up to a community and take from everybody. You have to give. You have to be able to have a little bit of energy that you are offering to everyone else.
That's a very long way to say one person is not going to fix your fucking life.
No, my God.
And expecting them to is yet another. There's so many paths to misery. That's another one though.
That's another t-shirt.
Is expecting like, oh, well, everything in my life will be fixed once I fall in love or once my partner makes this change.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big one. But the reason why I bring it up today is because I was listening to Dan Savage's Savage Love podcast. Highly recommend it. And there was a woman that was on there, and she was talking about she had just gotten out of this relationship, and the breakup caused her a lot to process. And the general thing in her breakup was her partner wasn't attracted to her anymore. She was feeling that way. They were kind of like going through the paces for a really long time. It gave her a lot of doubts. It chipped away at her ego. It chipped away, gave her a lot of insecurities. So got out of this relationship and she wanted to jump right back into things, as a lot of people do, and sometimes you can. But the thing is like she hadn't finished processing all of her stuff. And so...
Of course she hadn't.
So the next person that she was with had a really traumatizing experience with that person. And then the next person that she was with was a friend of hers. And even though the friend handled everything in an amazing way, they connected and like right after they were intimate, started just bawling. He stepped up, was holding space for her and all that stuff. And she's like, I don't think I'm in good working order right now to be able to be that level of vulnerable around people. And she's not.
Thank God she realized that.
Right. And thank God she had a good friend that was able to catch her when she was in that space where she was like,
realizing
things are coming up.
No, absolutely. I had a moment like that. I have a longtime friend in my life who every time we're sort of like in between relationships, we end up hooking up. Mm-hmm. But he's also been just genuinely a very good friend to me for many, many years. And after my last breakup, we had been hanging out and, it hadn't really been sexual at all. And he leaned over to kiss me and we started making out and I just burst into tears. Because that was the first time that anyone had tried to touch me in that way since my very emotionally devastating breakup. And I felt really weird at the time, but I was just like, I am so clearly not even ready for like physical intimacy.
Yeah.
Forget about like actually being in a relationship. And he was very understanding and he didn't take it personally and like everything was fine. But just there's a reason that if you're recently out of a relationship and you hop into another one, people are going to give you some weird looks because you
Or
need
if
some
you're
time to heal
grieving
and process.
or
If
you
you're-
just experience a trauma of some kind.
Yeah. Or if you're having a mental health crisis.
Right. Yeah. I remember I couldn't even get to that space. I had a breakup that hit me so hard. There's one night that like my friend was like, "Hey, we're taking this slow. Let's go out tonight." And I was like, "Okay." Got dressed up. We like went to the bar. There was dancing that night. I love dancing. As soon as we walked into the bar, I started sobbing.
Ooh.
And it was just because I was like, I'm used to doing this with her.
Yeah.
What is she out having a good time and it's totally fine and I'm just a shell of a human? Just like he walked me into the bar, I started like crying and he walked me right back
Right out.
out and he's like,
Nope,
"Okay,
we're
I
not
guess we're
ready.
going home."
Not
It's
ready.
not it's not a big
Okay.
deal. I was not ready for a relationship at that point. I was not ready for dancing. I was not ready to like be
A person.
out in a space yet. And that's also part of like the mental health recovery process is like there are so many times that we want to logic our way through something or rush our way to the end of the recovery process.
Because it's so tempting.
It is because
you can
it's
see it and you want it.
right. But the thing is, though, I want people to equate it with the same thing of like your physical health. If you broke your leg, yeah, you know how to walk. You're not going to go, you know what? I still remember how to walk. I'm going to go fucking skiing tomorrow. You know, and then you step out there with your broken leg and your leg goes, "Motherfucker."
Why?
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 And you go, "Ah, my stupid leg's still broken. It's not healed."
So along that line, like if you are not at the point where somebody tries to kiss you and you burst into tears, or you walk into a bar and you burst into tears, if you're a little bit past that, what maybe are some signs that you are not ready to be in a relationship that are perhaps a little bit more subtle?
I think a lot of people describe things as being raw, sort of in the same way of like, oh, you know, like this wound is pretty raw, or like I have a bruise there. It's sensitive to touch.
Your
It's-
emotions are easily activated.
Yes, yes. I don't want to talk about it in a way of like, oh, you have anxiety or you're experiencing a lot of stress because that could be muddled amongst other things. But like, you know, it's like that thing in your physical health recovery where, you know, like you can't squeeze something as hard. You know, like there's you're still sensitive to things, too sensitive. I mean, but this is also because we all have different degrees. You kind of have to know yourself and what your tolerance is.
Sensitive for me and sensitive for somebody else are two wildly different
Right,
things.
right. Yeah, recognizing what your abnormal patterns are.
So is the word reasonable applicable here?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Not at all. There, like, I generally have a very high tolerance for a lot of things. That's not the same as my partner, and I can't expect her to operate at the sensitivity level that I'm at. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. But like say you went on a first date with someone and
How do you know you shouldn't be on that first date?
well, or also if you're on that first date, what are maybe some signs from the person across from you where you go, "Oh, I don't think you're ready for a relationship." And also what are some things that might come up during that date that would let you know, "Oh, I am not ready for this."
I think a big thing is like if you or the person that you're on the date with are having trouble being present.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you are in your head the whole time, if you're like literally, I put my arm on the table. Oh my God, why is your arm on the table? If you're over analyzing every single thing that's happening, if you're on their phone a lot, that's a big thing.
Oh, if someone's on their phone a lot during a date, that's just a general red flag.
If they're sitting and doing one of these, like we're sitting across from each other, but I'm like, Wow, yeah. I mean, this is I can't like make eye contact with you. That's a really huge one. Yeah, if they're talking about their ex. I talked with somebody last night, and this is I love listening to people. And people, if you listen, will tell you every single thing about where they're at and what's going on if you just create the space for them to talk.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
don't even have to ask questions. If you're just able to like refrain from responding for
Yeah.
a few seconds, they'll keep going.
Yeah. In this conversation with a person who is a very brief acquaintance that I met one time, revealed to me that they may have repressed memories of being molested when they were a kid, and all of the different things about their most recent ex and the person that they left them for. And like, listen, I am more than happy to hold space. I love conversations that are not about
Surface.
the weather.
Yeah.
You
real
know,
conversation.
and I could say that I was like, hey, you really needed to talk to somebody. I could tell that like you're going through a lot right now, because the whole time that she was saying all of these things to me, she was also smiling and laughing about each one.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
Talking about massively painful things and not feeling the emotional impact of any of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. So if they are, talking too much about a wound,
So perhaps like
that could be a red flag that they're
shades
not.
of oversharing, checking
Yeah.
out. not
Well,
being
there's
present.
there's I think there's a couple different kinds of oversharing.
Well, there's the kind of oversharing where you're both involved, right?
Yes.
Right, where you're
Yes.
where maybe like, oh, we're telling some slightly inappropriate jokes, or maybe sharing some slightly inappropriate stories that normally wouldn't be considered first date material, but we're both doing it.
Sure.
So we're sort of like joining in on this social contract of like, yeah, all right, I'll step up to your challenge a little bit, and it's kind of like a little like test.
Yeah.
You're kind of testing each other. But if it's all coming from one person and the other person is just, oh, and that's their contribution.
It's like,
to the
well,
sharing.
also it's like if it's not a dance.
Yeah, if it's we've talked about the dance before with like flirting.
Yeah.
This
because
is part of it.
I'll tell you, as she started diving into these things, my response of I want people to feel like sharing.
It's
It's
safe.
like, well, like it's like you just dropped a couple of bombs, and I want you to know I'm not going to run away. I don't think it's weird. This is a safe space. Do you know what I mean? So I'll be like, yeah, sure, I've fucking dealt with it's like that. I'm not sharing in the same way because I'm not processing it in the same place.
Sure.
That she
you're
was.
not there.
I'm not there. But yeah, those are red flags that they're not ready. Being
Absolutely.
disconnected, sharing too much, expecting you, and then sharing too much adds another thing of expecting you to carry a lot of weight when like you don't have that level of trust yet.
Absolutely. Or expecting you to cater to their comfort and subjects that might possibly like trigger a lot of feelings when you don't know what those things are.
Listen up, everybody.
So if you get really activated by something that someone says on a date and you don't know them very well, blaming that person for bringing up the subject when there's no fucking way they could have known how much of an emotional trapdoor that is for you is just kind of shitty behavior.
Okay, I'm gonna put this out there, and maybe there's a really good way to translate this. Going out with people or meeting new people, period, whether it's a date or not, is like playing Minesweeper. Now, I'm not good at Minesweeper. I don't really know.
I'm amazing at mine.
Are you?
Yeah.
I don't really know how to like the little flags around, because sometimes you just step on a mine. All right,
Yeah,
but there are times that you can recognize that something is a sensitive subject
Yes.
for somebody, and
there will be visual and physical markers that you have stumbled into an area that is not okay.
yeah, once you've done that, stop. For the love of God, stop.
We talked a lot about stopping last week.
Also, this is a really big thing. When your friends are telling you stories about someone that they met and you're noticing a lot of red flags, I think as a friend, you need to say, hey, that's a little weird that happened.
Yeah. And you don't have to say you need to cut yourself off from this person. This person is
Right.
toxic, but you can point out like,
Can I reflect that back to you?
is that normal? Like, can I check in with you? Because
Yeah.
what I hear you saying is this. When I say it back to you, how does it sound coming from me and not from your brain?
Yeah. Or doing a lot of translating for your friends of like, when they're telling a story and someone has made a comment and I might be like, that's a strange reaction to what the thing that you just said. Let's talk a little bit about the intention of like where their mental space is at and why they might say something like that.
I was in a relationship with a partner that I had to do a lot of translating for.
Yeah.
And it was fucking exhausting. I hated it. I hated it that I had to add context and explanation for his rudeness and bad moods and unwillingness to engage with people in a respectful way.
Yeah.
And it just meant I was on edge all the time.
Oh, and that was not good for your mental health.
No, it wasn't good for my mental health at all. It sucked.
Wow. All right. We've talked about these things.
Yeah.
We've talked about these things.
So in the spirit of like being healthy enough for a relationship, I think at minimum, some of the skills that you need to have or the things that you need to be okay with, I think it's impossible to be in a relationship with someone if you cannot be held accountable for when you misstep.
Damn.
Right. And I certainly understand
Yeah.
the urge to be like, well, my mental health hasn't been great. How could you hold me accountable to my own actions? Why can't you just excuse everything forever? Pretty gaslighty, first of all.
Yeah.
That like you don't have the justification to hold me accountable for things that I do around and to you. So if you think that someone's saying, hey, what you did wasn't cool, if you are not able to hear that and like change behavior moving forward, if someone tells you you've hurt me in this way and you are going to refuse to stop hurting them in that way, you are not ready to be in a relationship at all.
I also want to advocate for everybody to take space from things. Even when you're at your best and you're the most open person, sometimes hearing something from somebody else, an assessment of who you are, may make you instantly defensive.
Of course, that's a very reasonable reaction.
Very reasonable reaction. And you may not have the words and you may go, I'm going to give you a slight highlight into what happened after our last podcast. You and I were talking about movies. Mm-hmm. And you said to me, you like structure. And my first response was like, no.
How dare you?
No. Okay. And I knew that wasn't like a truth for me, but I didn't have the words to articulate it. I was like, the only thing I could come up with, like, well, these are examples I know of like what's not true about that statement, but like there are aspects of it's true. And then it took me like a couple of days to kind of for me to arrive at that, like, okay, like what was it about that observation? Where the truth in it. So the truth in the structure thing is like, I really appreciate structure. And I also love when people break it. But I do need them this is like a movie thing. If you're setting up the world, you've got to stick to the world that you've set up, because that's the whole thing is like, you've built something, you got to stick to it. And part of my relationship with structure has to do with the fact that I have to build so much structure because my brain just loves chaos.
So just to be functional,
you
need a lot of structure.
I need to make it. And if I don't make it, I just fucking dance. Like no one's watching, which is not bad. Do you know what I mean? But the reason why I bring that up is because one, even if you're someone that's like always there and ready for it, it can hit you out of nowhere. These feeling explosions that happen. And it's okay that they happen. And you need to take time to like stop and think about it.
Right. And how do you express them to the unsuspecting person
Right.
that has said something that you are now having this emotional reaction to? Because on one hand, saying, I can't believe you would say that to me. How terrible of you.
Yeah.
And if it's all projection onto the other person and a lot of blame and a lot of shaming, that is not a great sign. If you're able to be like, whew, I am elevated right now. That set off something in my brain. I need a couple minutes, and then come back and talk about it. Those are two very different scenarios and reactions to the exact same stimulus.
Yeah.
And one of those is much better for relationships than the other.
Yeah. Why are we even trying to have relationships with each other? Do you know what I mean? People. It's all so hard. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, yeah, it is really hard. But I was just talking about this with my partner the other night, where, you know, so we got a second dog about 1.5 years ago, and he didn't necessarily want a second dog. And I wanted a second dog really, really badly. And I knew that there was, you know, whenever you get a puppy, there's this, oh God, puppy phase, which is so difficult. And it seems like the effort outweighs the enjoyment of the thing. But after a while, puppy learns the rules, puppy gets integrated into the house, and suddenly it doesn't take nearly as much effort as it used to. So the ratio of effort to joy and enjoyment changes. He was like, yeah, I do enjoy him now more that he's like a grown dog, and no, he doesn't take nearly as much effort, but like, man. And I just pointed out to him, I was like, well, if we're talking about things in your life that have disturbing ratios of effort to joy, if you don't want a part of that, you shouldn't be in a relationship with me. I am a high risk, high reward kind of person to be in a relationship with. It is not easy, but the dividends are amazing. I'm like a volatile stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah. I think it's great.
And so a lot of time, or the relationships that are worth it, the ratio of joy to effort will be more in balance. If a relationship is requiring a lot more effort than the output of joy and connection, and it keeps going on that way, it might be worth revisiting.
Well, I think I'm going to kind of jump over this thing because I want to talk exactly what you're talking about, which is like, how do we know when to call it quits? When someone's mental health is in such a space that like you're both doing too much damage being together.
Whether you are the person who's struggling with your mental health or you are the partner of someone struggling with mental health. Because spoiler alert, the answer is not just put up with everything forever because you're in a relationship.
No.
That's not the answer.
I'll speak to one. I had a relationship with someone that like really was struggling with a lot of different mental health things, a lot of different traumas. I was holding space for a lot of stuff. And part of the reason why I had to end it was because there was no space for me in the relationship.
No space for you and your needs as well.
I wasn't, not even just like my needs. This relationship had nothing to do with me. Now, my programming of trying to be a good person and trying to hold space for everybody under all circumstances kept me in that space for a lot longer than I should have. The hero complex so many of us have of like, not like you can save or change somebody, but like
I can't
I
abandon
can't
this
abandon this
person.
person if this person has been abandoned by so many other people.
And there are a lot of reasons for staying in a relationship longer than you should.
Sure.
The hero complex, wanting to support that person, feeling like you've already invested so much time that
Yeah.
it would be like a massive loss if you walked away. You know, that cost benefit ratio. So yeah, what is a
Well,
signifier, or what are some signs that maybe it is time to walk away?
the biggest one for me was the minefield that we were talking about. All mines.
All minds.
Everything.
Everything is a blow up.
Everything was a button. Everything was met with a very high experience of emotion, and it could come out from anywhere.
And so as a result, all of your time in the relationship is spent in this high anxiety, high tense, I better not move too much because I don't want to touch a mine.
Right, right. You start. So one sign that you can is that you are shrinking yourself down in order to be in the relationship.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's tough. The other thing was in this particular one, you start number one, like, we can't be our partner's therapist. It's great
Nor
that
should we.
We create a space that they can talk about their problems, but if you find yourself being strictly your partner's therapist and that is the only thing that your relationship has become, that's a red flag issue.
Also, if you are your partner's only source of emotional support, if there is no therapist, if there are no friends, if there are no family members that are also helping to support them during this time,
Yeah.
super unhealthy and totally unfair.
Yeah. And then, and a final thing, and some of you may have experienced this, you may have not. The relationship starts to become a hostage situation. Okay. The language starts to be coming around, if you leave me, X will happen. Or in my particular case, she would send me text messages of like, I'm doing this kind of harm to myself, when she was by herself. Which is, one, again, come back to the first thing. I'm not your therapist.
Yes.
I want to hold space for you, and I want to be here to receive you when you are in a place that you are struggling. However, you cannot put a gun to my head and take me into your space with you.
That's true.
You can ask me, you can seek help from me. You can say, hey, I'm really struggling and I need this from you.
I could use this kind of support right now.
Yeah. But it cannot be, you have to meet this need of mine or else.
Or I will hurt myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, that's such a dicey area to be in, because self-harmful behaviors will often happen whether or not the partner is there.
Right.
Right? Like I'm just going to be real open with you guys right now. I am a cutter. I have been a cutter for a very long time, ever since like college. And 2 out of 3 of the partners that I shared that with, where I hurt myself during our relationship ended pretty soon afterwards. And I never put it in the context of, if you don't do this, I'm going to. It was just, I'm really struggling and I did this. And they were not able to hold that space for me. They were not able to handle that kind of space that I was in. And so those relationships both ended soon afterwards. And like, you know, did it make me feel shitty? Yes, it did. But was it a shitty thing for them to do? For them to somewhere in themselves go, you know what? This person needs a kind of support that I'm not able to give. No, it's okay that they did that. It sucks for me, but it is okay. And then my most recent partner, when I shared that with him, he was very supportive, and he just sat with me. He didn't act like it was anything shocking.
Yeah.
He didn't seem scared. He was just, can I just sit here with you? Do you need anything? And it was one of the things early on in our relationship that really deepened my trust in him and deepened our bond.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it still would have been okay for him to say, you know what? I'm not in a space where I can support you if this is one of your coping mechanisms.
Yeah. I mean, so much of our relationships and finding good relationship have to do with how our partners handle when the vulnerable moments happen, and accepting the no's for an answer from the partners that aren't ready. There's a lot of people that will stay just because that's a person, they're in a relationship or whatever.
We'll stay no matter what.
And we want to be in connection with people, and so we'll accept less than what's great. But part of the way that you find a really great teammate is that, like, the partners that couldn't handle the certain things at certain times were moved on.
Mm-hmm. I never would have met my current partner if I was still in one of those relationships where they pretended they were fine and they weren't.
Yeah. Well,
I think the camera's kind of tilted.
No. Oh my God.
We need a reframing.
What is this madness? What happened? Pause.
At this very sensitive point in the conversation.
Did you see it start like just tilting?
I did, and I waited for the right moment to address it.
I think you're great.
I think you're great.
Hey everybody, thanks for hanging out. That's a cool camera move we were testing out. Jeez Louise.
And for anybody who's like worried or wondering, I haven't self-harmed in many, many years, and I'm what I would call in recovery.
That's great. Yeah.
You know, once shit like that happens, you're kind of always in recovery, but I'm doing great.
Well, let's throw something out there. When our partners are struggling with their mental health, how do we help them?
How do we help them?
Well, I will say, reflecting back, the thing that you were just talking about that your partner did was to hold space. This expression of holding space, which I'm so glad has come into popularity. Mm-hmm. Holding space means to me is being there, being present. And the space that you are holding is you're creating sort of like a bubble of safety for them to let their emotions out.
And you're creating a bubble of safety that you are in with them.
Yes.
Not where you're like, here, step in here.
Scream into this bucket.
No, it's a space where you are willing to sit and be present and kind of sit in the experience with them. It's the difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yeah.
So with sympathy, if you are walking and you see a hole and somebody's down in that hole, sympathy can look like, oh man, sucks for you to be down in that hole, huh?
Yeah, I feel bad for you in that hole.
Feel bad for you. Doesn't look super comfortable. Empathy is you climbing down into the hole and being like, I'm here with you. And I'm just going to sit here with you and keep things still for a while. And if you want to talk, you can talk. And if you want my help to climb out of here, I'll help you. But for now, I'm just going to sit here with you.
It's a big, like, we got this. And part of the holding space with your partnership is in that moment, they may not have the energy to withstand this storm. Mm-hmm. And basically you're like, hey, I'm going to be a rock in this storm. Hold on to me. Shit's going to swirl all around us. You're going to let all this stuff out. And then when the storm is over, I'm going to be right here. Mm-hmm. So it is in a lot of ways giving some of your own emotional energy to somebody in a place when they are depleted, and increasing the amount of safety so that they can really let it out.
And also using your presence to let them know that you are still lovable when you are having this experience and when you're having these feelings. You're not too much. You haven't earned isolation, and my affection is not conditional.
Yeah.
Right? Like just that message of being there while someone is experiencing something uncomfortable is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. The other thing I would add in for your partners, and again, this is hard because we've talked about the challenge of this. You need to, in whatever way that you can, encourage your partner to invest time into things that are recharging for them. And that may mean you have to take on some of the cost. So for example, like, let's say your partner gets recharged by going for bicycle rides. They love being a cyclist, going around. You may have to go, hey, every Saturday at this time, I'm going to go take the kids, or I'm going to go get out of the house or whatever, so that you can go cycling. I found this great group. You can go cycling.
Or I want to go cycling. Will you come with me?
Yes. Yeah. It's the recharging things are the things that we are missing the most. Part of the reason why people won't do it is because there's a cost, and you can get your partner who needs the recharging thing to happen if you have the energy to absorb some of the cost.
Yeah. Sometimes if you can just start the gears turning, or like a metaphor I like to use a lot is when there's a dog sled, right? A lot of times the sled gets kind of frozen into the snow, and before the sled can start moving, you have to break the runners out of the ice.
Oh.
And the energy to break the runners out of the ice can often completely overwhelm the person who is in the midst of a big, strong emotional experience. So if you can just help them, like, get up off the couch and get on the bike, break those runners out of the ice, very often the forward movement is easier.
Yeah.
And what that really means is just like things are easier with support.
Yeah, for sure. And the point you brought about, like, going bicycling with them or kickstarting that, so many people will default, and this is like an old way of thinking about things. And they're like, man, my partner's always sitting on the couch on the weekends, and I hate it. They're just sitting around. It's not very attractive. They could be doing all these other things. They tell me that they're not feeling good, but I don't see them doing anything about it. It's like, well, you can also give them some of your energy. You could also schedule some things on the weekend. If they are saying things, and this is the only advice that I ever give people is advice that they ask for and help that they ask for, or that they have said out loud. So if I'm with someone and they're like, I really need to start going for hikes on the weekends. I feel better when I'm doing it. When it comes to that weekend, I'll be like, all right, we're going hiking. They're like, I don't really want it. It's like, okay, well, like, this is the thing that specifically you said you wanted to improve. I want to make these changes, and I'm going to help you make those changes. That's the best way for us to support our teammates.
And along those lines, if you don't know how to support your partner when they're in the midst of a big emotion, it's okay to ask them. Don't ask them when they are in the middle of the big emotion, because they are elevated and their brain is not working properly. They are literally operating from a place of lizard brain. And they do not have the full cognitive capacity to analyze what's going on with them and analyze what is going to help de-escalate those emotions. But in moments when they're okay, when they are regulated, it's okay to say, hey, so when you're in that space, is there something I can do that would be helpful for you? Something like regulating breathing. Sometimes if I'm really worked up, my partner will come hold me and just start taking deep breaths. Not tell me to take deep breaths, but he will start breathing audibly and slowly, which will give me something to focus on. So I start breathing audibly and slowly. And just something about slowing down your breath can be like the first step towards de-escalating a big emotion.
Oh my God. Gang, I'm going to blow your minds with some science right now. The reason why breathing is so important is because it's the only voluntary and involuntary thing your body does. What does that mean? Well, it's the only thing that your brain can do on autopilot and that you can control. And since it is a thing that you can control, you can take other involuntary parts of your body and adjust them through breathing. So you can slow your heart rate down by slowing down your breath. One of the other really crazy things about our connection to each other is that we regulate our breathing based off of other people in the room. And we also know the moment when someone stops breathing. Okay. So one thing that is true is when you're thinking, you stop breathing. Like you're doing an automated breathing pattern. And the moment you pause or ponder something, your brain stops breathing. When someone else stops breathing, we
notice it.
We notice it. How do we know it? I didn't know. The reason why you can feel it is because it goes back to our group pack mentality, which is out in the woods, navigating through the dangers of the forest. If I stop breathing, you stop breathing because something's fucking going on.
Something's different.
And
possibly something's dangerous.
And all of our other senses kick on. So how you breathe really affects the people in the room. It is also a great tool to help your partner, that if like they are really having an anxiety attack or something, that you can really just focus on your own breathing, allow that to happen, change the space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there can be a lot of answers to that question of what can I do? Like for
Sure.
me, touch is very soothing. If I am held, if like my head is kissed, if like, you know, my face is held, those things help me. For somebody else, those things would make it even worse.
Right.
Like touching is not going to help.
Yeah.
So it's always worth it to ask what is helpful for you, what helps de-escalate you. Sometimes it's, I need to be wrapped in a blanket. Sometimes it's, there's too many fucking bright lights in here. If we can just make it a little darker, it will help. Or sometimes if I'm in a really dark space, turning on a light or turning on some music or turning off music. Like everybody has different things that send their brain different signals. So just like everything else we always talk about, it's always worth it to ask when your partner is not elevated.
Also, really important thing, this is why you need to know yourself. You can't communicate these things if you don't know what's recharging for you, if you don't know what's stressful, if you don't know how you can soothe, what things work. I mean,
I can tell you from personal experience, it is very frustrating to have someone want to help you, ask how they can help you, and for you not to have a fucking answer for them. It's
Yeah.
frustrating for them. It's frustrating for you. You feel like you're letting them down in a way because you're like, I wish I could serve you on a platter this really easy thing, but like I'm coming up with nothing.
yeah.
And that happens when you are not able to check in with yourself and see what calms you.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know what makes them happy.
Yeah.
And that's such a hard place to like be in.
And let me clarify, we're not talking about if you're having an anxiety attack or if you're in the midst of depression or a lot of anger. The transition we're talking about here is not going from this to being happy and feeling great.
Also, happiness is fleeting. It's not a permanent state of emotion.
We're going for more of a contentment here, people.
Happiness comes in waves, gang. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up this episode on just general mental health, relating to our mental health with ourselves and our relationships. Next week,
we're going to get a little more specific about different common mental illnesses or different just ways neurodivergency.
Yeah.
And we will talk about specific support and coping techniques for a lot of those.
We're going to talk about anxiety, depression, ADHD,
people on the autism
spectrum.
We'll talk about a lot.
Yeah.
I'm going to get into the real nitty gritty.
But anyway, just to recap, mental health, check in with yourself. check in with who your friends are.
Yeah.
Who are you spending time with, and how much money do they have? Not true. Not true.
And where are you spending the most energy, and how much satisfaction, joy, contentment are you getting out of those different areas? If you're putting in a shit ton of energy and you're not getting much out of it, maybe there needs to be some rebalancing.
Yeah. And this is another crazy task. Name 5 things that are recharging for you and do one of them this week.
Just one.
Your homework assignment is go feel good at some point.
In fact, don't do all 5.
No, don't. Just one. Just one.
Don't you dare.
And not a numbing thing or a relaxing thing, a recharging thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's the homework. Get it.
Didn't think you'd have homework, did you?
Go chop some wood. That's recharging and arousing.
It's arousing for me. It's not. Watching someone chop wood is recharging and arousing.
There is a lot of studies that chopping wood is the exercise that generates the most testosterone.
Yes, it is.
If you are missing testosterone in your life, go chop some wood.
That's why my partner is bald as fuck. Baldness comes from too much testosterone.
Oh, no.
Just too much of a man for hair.
I've got so much hair now. It also generates the most firewood. That's it. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Take care of yourselves.
Bye.